Gemma Tognini from GT Communications and Caroline DeRusso, host of the Royal Report. Great to speak to both you, both in Perth at the moment. And why wouldn't you be? I'll talk about some of the reasons that's the place to be in just a moment. But first up, I want to get you your thoughts on, I think, this very, very difficult issue of UNRA funding. That is aid funding going into Gaza, where, of course, families are actually starving because of the war that's going on. Australia suspended, along with its other countries, aid going in through UNRA because of its connections to terrorism. But Penny Wong's decided that money should go back. Gemma, why should this not be the case?
Well, first of all, Chris, the review hasn't even been finished. There is a review that's been commissioned and it's going to tell us what we already know, which is that UNRWA is hopelessly compromised, hopelessly conflicted and complicit in the atrocities of October 7. There are other ways to get aid into Gaza. The United States is getting aid into Gaza via other means and other NGOs. Australia could do the same, but it hasn't. And I think this is a terrible, terrible show of weakness by the government on this issue and a terrible misstep.
Yeah, I'm kind of conflicted on this one, Caroline, because I'm no apologist for UNRWA. There's no doubt they've been engaged in all sorts of propaganda in the past. And the trouble is, though, they're such a vast organisation, heavily involved in the delivery of all sorts of healthcare and education in the Palestinian territories, in Gaza, that they're the only ones with the sort of means and distribution to really deal with aid properly. You know, in the current situation, maybe they're the only bet to save civilian lives.
I guess with any of these things, we need to consider all of the options. And there are alternative options at the moment. And we know that the government is also increasing its funding to UNICEF, another arm of the UN, to distribute aid. And we're also assisting Jordan and the United Arab Emirates in distributing aid into Gaza. I don't think there's any objection about the distribution of aid. It's
Absolutely.
how it's done and are we getting receipts? And that there is the big issue, because when you look at it from the expectation point of view of what Australians expect that taxpayers' money gets spent on, it's not the wages of people who, like Gemma said, heavily compromised and involved in terrorist activities. Now, Penny Wong said yesterday, oh, well, we've got the best advice that UNRWA isn't a terrorist organisation. We didn't say that they were a terrorist organisation.
Yeah.
Proving a non-issue doesn't make the issue in contention go away. The issue in contention is who's working for you and why should Australian taxpayers' money be compromised in that way?
Yeah, and can UNRWA guarantee that aid that goes through it won't be siphoned off by Hamas and all the rest of it? I think where I'd be in furious agreement.
That's the other issue, Chris.
Yeah, exactly. I think when the war is finished, UNRWA should be dismantled and there should be another way to deal with all this. But it's terribly fraught, but I hear your concerns and they're very, very valid. I want to go on to Western Australia, though, get into the dirty little financial debate we're having in Australia. As usual, states fighting amongst each other about divvying up the GST. But I'm struck by the fact that you're both sitting in the state that's got this wonderful resources bounty, right? The state government there, I think, has got a $4 billion surplus the current financial year. I noticed in the weekend, the Australian, the rich list for Australia, the top three people, richest people in the country are three West Australians. And then there's another one in Kerry Stokes who makes the top 10. Your joint over there is awash with cash, Caroline. So why should GST money from New South Wales and head off to WA?
Well, it's not really. We're just getting 70% of the GST that is generated here, as opposed to 35%, which is what we were doing before. Really, the lesson in all this, Chris, is that where there are resources, the states needs to exploit them. And in Western Australia, people have taken plenty of risks. People, you know, they don't call it the Wild West for nothing. Those people on that rich list, they all took really big risks and they paid off. So if you develop your resources, you should absolutely have the benefit of them. And other states, you look at somewhere like Victoria, you know, they've got all of that conventional gas down in the Gippsland that they don't want to touch because they want to moralise over the rest of us. Well, you know, I'm not really interested in mendicant states. You either exploit what you've got, make the best of what you've got, don't come and whinge to us.
Yeah, it's a pretty fair point. New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, they've all had, there's all areas they won't develop for gas because they won't break through the objectives on that. Gemma, the issue, I suppose, is I'd be a little bit more sympathetic to the West Australian government. I know you live in Sydney now anyway, but I'd be more sympathetic to the West Australian government if they didn't shut their borders and cut themselves off from Australia during the pandemic.
Well, Chris, you're certainly not going to get an argument from me on that particular issue. I think we both still have the PTSD around border closures. But, you know, what Caroline said is bang on the money. I mean, the Victorian government, for example, are quite happy to ruin the offshore environment by trying to get this ridiculous offshore wind industry established against the wishes of all key stakeholders, except, of course, those who are invested in offshore wind. And we know what you wrote in your column in the Oz a couple of weeks ago now, I think it was, about the actual, degeneration of the elements for these renewable projects. It's actually not green at all. There is nothing green about it. So states like Victoria can go cry me a river. Literally, they have ruined themselves. They're not getting, I should say, our GST. I'm in my Perth head office today, so I'm going to say it, our GST.
Yeah, fair enough. You're employing people in Western Australia as well, so why not?
Absolutely.
I want to stay with you, Gemma, and get your thoughts on Holly Valance. I don't know whether you've ever been a Neighbours viewer, but here's Holly Valance in London on Friday.
Like, I don't understand why you had this, like, demonic little gremlin high priestess of climatism as the goddess in classrooms, Greta
Thunberg, okay.
And the kids are all coming home with depression and anxiety. Why would you go to your music lesson or bother doing your homework or get out of bed if you think we're all going to be dead in 5 years anyway? I mean, they told me in class. Greta told me. Why would you bother? Doesn't give anybody hope.
Yeah, Gemma, how about that? Someone in the entertainment industry, so rare that they reflect mainstream values.
Look, I have no idea what she did on Neighbours. Last I watched Neighbours was when they bulleted the thing and Carly and Jason came around and then they revived it. But as to what she had to say, I mean, I wouldn't personally describe Greta Thunberg as a gremlin, but I feel like the sentiment behind her comments have great weight. I mean, Al Gore was telling us 20 years ago that we were all going to be dead by now, that all of the ice caps were going to be melted by now. There is no but it's true, right?
Yeah.
There is no sensible conversation. There is no sensible conversation being had. There are lots of issues for it. It's political bias. It's definitely media bias. But if your kid's going to school and being told that they're going to die if they don't eat bugs, and all of them are tweeting about it on phones built with fossil fuels, something's desperately out of whack here, and we need to be bringing the pendulum back to the sensible centre, having sensible conversations about energy mix. That includes nuclear. That is not an over-reliable reliance rather on renewables, that there is an energy mix. It's called a mix for a reason. I mean, Caroline will probably talk about it, but there's a story here about this town called Quairading. It's only an hour and a bit from Perth, but they're having rolling blackouts of days and days and days. This is not what we shouldn't be having that here. There's no reason for it.
Absolutely. Now, I haven't got time for you to talk about that, Caroline, because I've got to hear your brief take on Kate and the fact that Princess Kate apparently has now got rumours about her marriage. I mean, this matters, all right, apart from all the prurient gossip around the place. This woman is in line to be queen, right, if everything hangs together properly?
Yeah, it is. And it's been funny watching over the course of the last week or so. So when I had the breaking news on my show last Sunday about this photo, and we obviously spoke about the photo on the Monday, by the time I woke up in the morning, the entire world had lost its mind. And the problem is it set a powder keg for all manner of other scuttlebutt. It just took off during the week. Now, all I'm waiting for now is like the love child in Barbados and, the alleged fraud, somewhere in the middle. Like, you're just waiting for it to keep rolling in.
Well, when you...
And all because she had a photo without her wedding ring on. I mean, firstly, that's incredibly sexist. Maybe she just finished doing the dishes.
Exactly. When you get that exclusive on the love child in Barbados, break it on this program. We would appreciate that.
Know. I shall.
Thanks for joining us. Caroline D'Urso and Gemma Tognini, both coming to us live from Perth.